Welcome to MFP Live. I'm Donna Ladd, the
I,
co-founder. And what? And this is Kimberly Griffin. She's like jumping in there quick. And anyway, I'm sorry. I'm the co-founder of the Mississippi Free Press, and she's the other co-founder of the Mississippi Free Press. I'm the editor. Kimberly's the publisher. We got a little, whatever today. It's summer,
it's summer. We have our summer clothes on.
I know we do. I'm trying to wear color. I was just talking about that. But Albert Sykes is with us. Had a little bit of a tech issue to take care of, so he's going to be joining us in just a couple minutes. And so the show's kind of starting a little bit different than normally. But Kimberly and I thought we might take a couple minutes here at the top before Albert joins us to tell you all a little bit about what's going on with the solution circles right now. We've got, many of you know that we host what are for now virtual solution circles, which are conversations about really vital issues that face Mississippians. And so last week, we had our first media solution circle. And it was a wonderful turnout. We had, I don't have the graphic here. I'll try to do this in the future. We have a nice colorful graphic that shows where in the state that our participants are from. And so we had a real mix of people. And we divided into 4 groups. Kimberly ran the show wonderfully. The circle. And we discussed basically how media in the state, not just us, all journalism, what people expect from journalism in the state, how we can cover communities better, how we can cover, what was your group, Kimberly, specifically?
Our group was how we can cover people that the group you identify with. So if you identify as a gay Black man, how can we cover those folks well? How can we cover, and my group was mostly women.
Right. And then I was in a group that was how media can cover young people better. And also, with things people are talking about so often, particularly young people of color, crime comes in there, and how media covers and often obsesses about, episodic crime, and then there was the other one was apparently a really dynamic circle group within the circle that was about political and elections coverage in Mississippi and how it can be done in a way that better serves communities. And that was a really dynamic one. So where we are on the media circles, and by the way, they're sponsored by the Mississippi Humanities Council, as well as the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation is supporting these circles. So this is our first circle. And we gathered through all of this, the participants gathered, it's kind of the causes and the solutions to media coverage and how it can, and journalism, and how it can be better serve the people of Mississippi. And there were a lot of wonderful outcomes. Oh, and by the way, we did this with the Jackson Advocate. I saw Deanna sitting up there. I'm like, wait a minute, got to mention Deanna. And so there were a lot of really good ideas come out of this. We're going to be posting the outcomes, hopefully tomorrow, depending on schedule issues. But it's not there yet, I'll warn you, but our URL is going to be mfp.ms/trusted news. So we'll be putting that out on social media and such. But so we're going to be posting what the outcomes were and the suggestions. Like in my group, one of the suggestions that I just loved, and I'm already thinking, how can we help facilitate this and invite a wide variety of media who do we work with on this, which is this idea of having a training for journalists about how to cover young people and how to communicate better with them, and what are their thoughts coming into it. So it's pretty exciting. And I think that's a great idea. Now, the question would be, who does the training, those kinds of things. So we'll be asking people like Albert Sykes, who should do that kind of thing. So I know that's one of the issues that we're going to be talking to him about tonight. And so the one thing I want to say here before we bring Albert in is that we are doing our second media circle in this series on Monday, July 19th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. That's July 19th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And all of this will be in social media, so you guys will see it. And then next week, there's a circle. Kimberly, you want to mention the Black Women COVID circle that's happening?
So next week, we're having the Black Women in COVID circle, and we really need folks from Black women from Kemper County, Noxubee, and Holmes County. Those are the areas we're focusing on right now. So if you know anyone who is a Black woman or identifies as a Black woman from those areas, please, please, please make sure you email asia@mississippi.freepress.com or solutions@mississippi.freepress.com, because we really want kind of all places in the world, all ages, all employment and educational background. This is not hoity-toity. This is everybody coming to the table. And we want to hear what everyone from the community has to say. So those are, once again, that's Noxubee, Holmes, and Kemper County. So,
and one other thing there is that we now have a form where you can sign up for either of these circles right now, or just general interest, so that we're letting you know about these dialogues. And that URL is mfp.ms/circles. Isn't that really simple? He's got solutions. He just flashed it, but now it's mfp.ms/circles. So if you just go there and sign up, you're going to get all the information that you need about circles coming up. And we can update you, when new information goes up and that kind of thing. Okay, so our guest is ready for us now. Got all of his tech and such worked out. Hey, Albert, how are you?
How you doing? Good to see you.
Hey, Albert. Hey.
Kim, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Well, I'm tickled to have Albert Sykes. For those of you who don't know who Albert is, Albert is well, I know him for a lot of reasons. I've known him for nearly 20 years now, right? But Albert is now the executive director of, and it's called, I'm trying to look at it, do you say IDEA or IDEA when you refer to IDEA? You do refer to that, and then you tell them what it stands for, because I've flipped away from it. I know it's got education in it.
So it's the Institute for Democratic Education in America. And our work is to preserve public education and to make it more equitable, and to definitely make public education in America something that we can declare to be an anti-racist institution for our children and our families to be served by.
And this is, so people understand, this is a really forward-thinking organization, right? It's not an organization just to get the legislature to provide more funding, even though that's a good thing too. It's about much more than that, right? Talk a little bit about the core ideas of IDEA.
So for us, the big picture is community and community story, and how do we build a state, and better yet, build a country that is based in what people need, and the way that we figure out what people need and the ways that we can best serve them is by hearing their stories. When I think about the impact of story, I think about Fannie Lou Hamer and what it was like for her to sit in front of the Democratic Convention in 1964 and to tell a story that was so simple, so everyday, so unique to her, so unique to Mississippi, but then also that simple story from this lady, from this state called Mississippi, was powerful enough to make the president get on TV to interrupt her, because not only was her story powerful, but it was the truth, and it was a part of a truth that America didn't want to face. And so for us at IDEA, we see those stories every day when you look at Springboard to Opportunity and the parents that are Keisha and those folks, Sarah Strip and the leaders over there at Springboard to Opportunities, and the way that they really working with the core of our city, the backbone of our city, which is Black mothers, the people who bear the brunt of whatever Jackson is, right? The people who also deserve their rightful place in the leadership and the direction of where this city should go. So when you, for us, our work is rooted in the stories of the folks that not only this state and this country is relegated to the bottom, but that has become a societal norm to overlook. Where when I was in the algebra project, which I know we'll get into later.
Yeah, we will. Yeah.
We talked about kids at the bottom quartile of education. With these mothers, we talking about people at the bottom quartile of every societal standard that you look at across Mississippi and across the country. And that's because America has decided that the stories of Black mothers are not relevant, that the stories of the Black community aren't relevant. And so that is why it is important that we have local narratives and local storytellers that's able to make sure we have some integrity about what people know about who we are.
Well, and you're talking about story. And so I want you, we're going to get deeper into education itself, but I want you to tell us a little bit, for those who don't know your story. Tell us, first of all, just kind of start with, you grew up in Jackson. Talk about a little bit about that, and then I happen to know your story pretty well, but about what changed your story, what changed your trajectory.
So I was born, raised in the Shady Oaks community in Jackson, and I remember being just a kid in the house with my brother, my mother, and my great grandmother, who went on to be paralyzed. And a lot of my childhood, and my brother too, was helping take care of my grandmother. But coming up under just my mom for so long until she got married when I was around 12, and my stepfather became like my in-house example. But prior to that, I was 11 years old, going to middle school, get to the 6th grade, and I meet this guy named Bob Moses, who was running this program called the Algebra Project. So for us in this community, narrative crippled or propelled most of us over here. Narrative said that you designated to fail, or you destined to succeed. And so it depends on which narrative you heard the most, plus which opportunities were coupled with the narrative that you were being told about yourself, that helped some of us get opportunities to be able to not be the kids who bought into the, you have to leave Jackson, you got to get your degree, and you got to go and take care of yourself. We were the kids that bought into the, we can figure out the problems that we have at home, and we can also make a living from making Jackson better, right? With the Algebra Project, what was born out of it was this group of kids: April Dortch, Melvin Bell, Sammy Myers, a bunch of kids who was like 1 year older than I was. They were going to the 9th grade when I was coming into the 8th grade, and we bore this organization called the Young People's Project, which was simply saying we wanted to continue to learn math. We wanted to continue to prepare ourselves for a 21st century world, an information age world, right? Because what we did understand, we were still being given a sharecropper's education, as if though we would walk out of Brinkley, we would walk out of Lanier, we would walk out of Murray Jim Hill, any school, and just walk out into the fields and be cotton pickers. And so when the Young People's Project was born, it was really born, one, out of a need for ourselves to have ownership, and two, lunch was the last meal for a lot of people at school. So the Kellogg Foundation seeded us enough money to start weaving and investing this dream that Black kids could learn algebra and be ready for it when they got to high school, right? That they could learn algebra and pass it in middle school and go to high school and be ready for geometry and beyond. But one of the things that we had to answer before we could even get into selling that was, what do young people need? What do we need? What is it that
Mhm.
we actually need? Food was one of the things. So
Mhm.
you can see Brinkley Middle School full of a couple of hundred kids at any given time after school who didn't just come from Brinkley. They came from different high schools. They came from other middle schools because they heard about these kids who give free pizza, hamburgers, hot dogs, chicken, whatever. And the only thing you got to do is be serious about learning math. Um, so math was the thing in the algebra project, but what math taught us was critical thinking. It gave us a very, very deep relationship with our community. So where some kids were right down the highway learning integers by looking in a textbook, we were learning integers by walking through our community and observing things that we saw on the way, and taking a trip back to our school and observing the things we saw along the way, and creating a trip line that showed which directions we went and which directions we came to go back. And did the same thing with kids in Boston, like right up at MIT and Harvard, and put them on the subway and let them go one direction and let them come back another direction and make a number line where it wasn't just about understanding numbers, it was about having a relationship with numbers. So that's what Bob and the Algebra Project did for us. It wasn't just that we had a relationship with I mean, it wasn't just that we were trying to learn numbers, we were trying to have a relationship with math, and we were trying to understand all the intricacies of what we learn from math and how that helps us navigate the world that we live in. And so that's when we started to really look at things like the way that education hadn't changed in Mississippi for so long, and then the fact that across this country and across this state, you never had a constitutional right to public education, right? And so these things are all in place by design, in full rebellion to the thought of free Black people, which started after the Emancipation Proclamation. So some of the most racist and horrible things you see, because people can't accept the idea that something that had the property value of a dog or less is not supposed to have equal value in society as you.
Albert, well, one thing I want to just interject in there, but because I know Kimberly wants to get in here, is for anybody out there who might be listening to this and has not run into who Bob Moses is yet, I just kind of want to say that just some historic context there. I mean, Mr. Moses was from New York City, right? And he was a math teacher who came to Mississippi in the 1960s as part of, he was part of SNCC, right? The Student Nonviolent Organizing Committee. And he was the co-founder or leader of Mississippi Freedom Summer in 1964. So Mr. Moses is a really big deal. And he stayed, like a good number of civil rights veterans that a lot of us have had the pleasure of being inspired by and interacting with. And he stayed in Mississippi. And then the Algebra Project, there's a wonderful book out there about the Algebra Project. And so I really kind of encourage people to, it's a remarkable thing that he was doing. And it was headquartered in Lanier, I believe, right? And right.
Brinkley, and then Lanier. The book is Radical Equations.
That's right.
And so
Thank you.
when you read the book Radical Equations, you get everything from the cotton fields, the sharecropping fields of the Mississippi Delta in the 60s to us as these little old kids in Jackson. You get to read the story of kids from Shady Oaks who took something with their Mississippi hands and their Mississippi eyes, and they built it from one classroom in one middle school in this city, in one of what they would deem a throwaway community with a bunch of throwaway children. We built something right there. Everywhere you see it across the country, it has the Mississippi imprint. It was started by Mississippi children with a Mississippi dream that was willing to share it with the country, and has had opportunities to share it across the world. And so that's one of the things I'm most proud of, is that Bob, Ella Baker, June Johnson, C.C. Bryant, all of these Mississippi greats, Mega Evers, like they all had one thing in common, which was taking common everyday people, putting them at the forefront and making sure that society understood the value of listening to the people who suffer from the things that we have to work on. Understand that the solutions live there.
You know, you talk about one of the things that is I guess a thread through a lot of conversations on MFP Live is the idea that Mississippi keeps betting against itself because it means some other people will get some stuff, and which is the problem in our educational system. We've decided that we don't want to attract any industry beyond, factories and grunt work, because it means we would have to change our educational system, which means that some other people, whoever your other people are, will get some stuff that they don't deserve. And so I really struggle with that, because you have decided that you're okay with being broke. And so you're okay with being broke. And then so as a result, we gonna all be broke. So it's this idea of betting against oneself. Now, recently, we've all been talking about critical race theory and teaching. And I have not read enough about this, so let me be very clear. But I do know that Black and brown and women are all left out of a historical narrative in most of American societies. Like, there's whole strains of people that you don't even find out about until you're fully grown.
It's then, come on.
But then, and then or you reject, you like, well, no one ever told me about that thing. What does your day-to-day work look like to make sure that doesn't happen, or to help that process?
I think one is truth telling, because the second part of what you're saying tells the truth about the first part of what you said. Mississippi don't bet against itself. Mississippi bets against Black people and the poorest people in Mississippi.
That's right.
Right. And so when you talk about that particular industry and you talk about our education system, then one is designed to feed the other. Right. And so when we talk about standardized tests, those things only made to sort in place. These say where your lot in life should be. I tell people, you go back and look, it was a state Supreme Court case in New York where a family sued the public school system of New York, saying that their child deserved the right to a high quality public school education, and that every child in the state of New York deserved that. The New York State Supreme Court, in its dissension, said that we cannot enforce any rule or law that would make possible for every child in the state of New York to get a high quality education, because if that happens and if it's effective, then that means we no longer have a mechanism by which we decide who takes the menial work in the state of New York. But that's not a state of New York statement. That's a United States of America statement, where we have to siphon off what we offer certain people, because it's the only way we can keep a class in the caste system, which is one of the things that we're looking at now with Bob, the Azure Project idea, and a bunch of other people across the country, is like looking at the caste system that exists within education itself, and then just looking at the larger American caste system. So when you talk about our day-to-day work, it's first those springboard mothers, right? It's the folks in West Jackson who talking about community schools. It's the people at Pecan Park who getting it done. It's the active neighborhood associations. Like, everywhere you go on in West Jackson, you're gonna hear about Miss Fran from the neighborhood association. I don't care what you do, where you go, if you want to move something. And so looking at who are the movers and shakers in this city, and they are not all elected officials. Like, they not all people who we place on pedestals and look at as folks of prestige. They everyday folks who get in their community and they have real relationships. So we tend to err on the side of following the people who are in the places that know the people, right? Who got access and trust to people who can really help us get done what people say they want done, not what we think should happen. It don't matter how many opportunities we see out there that's available. Like, some people probably not going to care about this $168 billion this same way some other people will, because the immediacy of our lives is not the same place by place. Being poor in South Jackson is different than being poor in West Jackson. That's different than being poor in North Jackson. Like, poverty don't even have the same story in this city.
Right.
For no two families, for no two sides of town. And so it is the day-to-day workers understanding that the landscape of what Jackson is, what people saying they're experiencing, and then also what they offering up in the sense of, this is what we want to need to fix the places that we are. Not people that's asking for help, people that's saying, give us the resources and get out of our way, right? Don't give us your strategy. Don't give us your know-how. Don't give us your best practices. Give us the resources and watch us. So then you go, and again, I know I'm tooting Aisha's and them horn, but when you go look at the numbers of mothers who started getting this universal basic income, and then look at their upward trajectory in employment, where people tell this story that these are the people that if you give them anything, they'll just be confident with that. They'll never want more. These people are not only getting supplemental income, but they also increasing the amount of employment that they not only seeking, but obtaining and like retaining. And so it's so many gems in Jackson. When I looked at the young lady, right? Every life in Jackson matters. And so we had this day, 2 days, where we should have been celebrating thousands of kids.
Right.
And they still a young lady's life, right? And then, but when you look at that, you see how much we really care about our city, because that hurt every corner of Jackson. You heard some parent, some student, some non-parent, some grandparent, retired teacher, barber, whatever, was talking about how it hurt to look up hours later after what's supposed to be one of the happiest moments in this young lady's life, and her life is stolen, right? But it's not just that. It's also the fact that had that young lady not died, it would have been some other negative story that would have had the headlines, right? Versus celebrating, we got a couple of thousand kids who are about to take the next step in their life. They're about to go represent Mississippi, whether they go to Hines, whether they go to Jackson State, whether they go to Harvard, whether they go to Yale, whether they go to Stanford, Spelman. Like, they're about to take the next step into going to represent their families, their community, and their state, and their city. And like what we stuck with a lot of times is the seeking out of telling the worst story of what's going on, right? And then you look and say, well, why is no hope in Jackson? When you had a kid like Macy Brown, who was a high school student, when the state attempted to take over Jackson Public Schools, and she wrote an article, if I'm correct, it may have appeared in Jackson Free Press, where she actually talked about what it's like to be a young person absorbing the narratives, right, that your governor on down have about you, and then wondering why these kids get up and they look hopeless. They not hopeless. They seeking out something to hope in. They seeking out somebody that will have hope in them, right? So that's what you're seeing in the streets of Jackson. They talk about black on black crime, and I know I'm all over the place, right?
Keep going. It's fine.
We talk about black on black crime without realizing that people interact with the folks that's closest to them.
Right.
It's people in Jackson that's too poor to have ever seen Ridgeland. It's people in Jackson that never been to Ridgeland, right? And then you say, well, why? Because people act out. They when they frustrated, they act out where they are. Now, what we have to do is continue to be in our communities and make people understand what we upset at. We're not mad at the people we looking at every day, right? Because a lot of the people we wake up beside, they in the same conditions we are. What we hadn't had to talk about is the system. And when you're in a majority black city like Jackson, with the largest population of black people in the country, right? And then you got all this black leadership, you can't even have a conversation about Black Lives Matter because the police that kill you look like you, right? But the difference is we can't, if we continue to talk about racism as person to person, and we not really examining the system where you could have no racist person, by nature, but you could have a racist system that non-racist people can carry out every day.
That's right.
Right. And so we have to have that conversation in a place like Jackson. And we so far behind on having a systemic conversation. That's why you see Antar get blamed for pipes. You see Tony Yarber get blamed for pipes. You see Harvard Johnson. Well, when we talk about Harvard was the first one in 1994. I mean 1997. This 2001. Yeah. 97, Harvard 97, this 2001. We 24 years in the black leadership with some 100-year-old pipes, and everybody gonna forget the other 76 years.
Yeah. Right.
Where we were subjected to being nothing but property in this city, where we were subjected to being nothing but second class and third class citizens in this city, and like 24 years in, is black leadership's fault. Yeah. When you look at the state legislature, when you go look at other local elected places and they say, what's wrong with black leadership? No, what's wrong with the system that they've been elected into is that it was never designed to absorb, support, or sustain black leadership. And we got to be serious about that. Yes,
well, it's so, I'm with you. I mean, you know that, but it's like, it's insane this idea that we're facing now, to kind of bounce off of Kimberly's point about this whole critical race theory, which isn't even really taught until law school normally, or graduate school. But people need to keep their eye on what is actually important here. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's the systems. It's understanding how things got this way. It's what you're talking about with the water system. It's the blaming of the leadership, of the black leadership, without understanding the conditions that were created before black leadership took over. It's all of those things. And with education, with young people, it's like, and you know, I'm obsessed with prevention of violence, as I know you are. And, you know, it's like this idea that they're just a bunch of bad kids running around without any consideration for so many people of what those conditions are, how they're growing up. I'm so glad you said right at the top the thing about being hungry. I mean, I've met so many hungry young people in Jackson, right? It's like hunger itself. I mean, physical hunger is important. It's all of these conditions. I mean, like you mentioned, someone, kids who'd never been to Ridgeland. I mean, I've met kids through the Youth Media Project and who were coming in who hadn't been downtown. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or if they had been like once or something, because a lot of our kids aren't welcome or don't feel welcome or don't feel accepted. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It's just, so I wanted you to talk about, Kimberly's got a follow up here. She's kind of plugged back in here. Kimberly, are you here? Yeah. Jump on back in there.
Yep.
So it's interesting. We talked about the systematic issues that we deal with. One of the things that I also think is laid on top of that. So you have people who are dealing with basic stuff, like they hungry, you know, mm-hmm. like they don't have transportation from mm-hmm. 2 blocks away. I mean, it's these layers, and it's also bureaucracy. So think about what it takes for you to fill out a college application. Think about what it takes for you to fill out that FAFSA. You have to call somebody. I'm a grown person with a master's degree. I had to get somebody on the phone and be like, I am trying to help someone and I am confused. You know, it's this 1,000 cuts to keep people out of the place, you know? Mm-hmm. It's like, it's layers and layers and layers. And then one of the things I see, because you all have been so successful, because there are these JPS schools that are thriving in spite of, all over the city, people are turning out like stuff, you know, Macy, and I see, well, JPS is operating without anything they need. So what we'll do is we'll make the surrounding school districts, we'll sell this narrative to drain off our folks and make them move. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You can respond to that however you need to. I think I just went off on a tangent.
We're all ranting.
Some of it is that they don't even have to sell, because you got entities if I can be honest, like the Clarion Ledger, that when the state was ready to take over our schools, you had all these negative articles written by people right here in the middle of this city that talk so bad about our kids, talk so bad about our district, right? That this was being used as evidence and proof for why this district needed to be taken over. And so it is that sometimes you don't even, the neighboring districts don't have to say nothing, because we got people right at home that say our kids not valuable. And then you got people that, if we being honest, that started in the late 70s, like when integration really tried to make itself happen in Jackson. You had white families that say, you know what, South Jackson don't look as good to me no more, or at least the schools in South Jackson don't look as good to me no more. All of these different places where people intentionally knew, right, that if you leave, you change the whole ecosystem. And then so it ain't a surprise that when you have less property owners, you collect less property taxes. When you got you got a district that depend on property taxes, they not getting as much, right? People know how to drain us, right? And then everybody say, well, why can't you get more black homeowners? Well, you got a lot of things that historically you got to look at. Redlining, you got to look at bank loans, you got to look at how people had been shut out. You know, when Mega Evers came to this community, the dream was that black people would be able to live in a community, right? And that Jackson would be the mecca of the country, to be one of the most beautiful places where people are looking and say, we want to be a part of that. Then in the places where we have had great success, like Mound Bayou,
right?
They tear it up. Tulsa, Oklahoma, they tear it up, right? And then and it's a difference, right? They rebel against us for succeeding. You get Occupy Wall Street because you got white kids who've been overeducated and underemployed. They're able to act out, right? We a threat when we act out against this country, against this system, against the things that cripple us, right? And it's so welcome in so many other spaces that it's becoming apparent that the pressure got to stay on.
Right.
Here's our we ran a story recently by people
writing too.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We ran a story recently about redlining that folks ought to take a look at. This was by two of the fabulous women associated with Hope, and there's some graphics in here. There's a map of Jackson here. If our producer could scroll up to that map, that would be amazing. I don't know if he can or not, but hopefully. That just shows that how redlining worked and have recently. I mean, not just way back. I mean, this is systemic racism, you know, and other types of racism too. But this is what we talk about when we say that the conditions, it's not really hard to understand that the conditions of today depend on what happened in the past. That's true in our individual lives, right? And much less by society and racism in society. So I really kind of encourage people to go look up this story, and if you haven't read it yet, because it's very powerful. They're great data researchers and such, and just really kind of laid it out here. Now, Albert, something I wanted to, go in a little bit deeper. There's so many things here we could talk about. We could go on for hours, but go in a little bit deeper. Like we're going to start an education solutions project soon. And so we're going to be doing this in counties around the state. But if you were going to advise us, and you are on our advisory board, so we will be calling on you to advise us.
And folks, y'all don't mind sending some donations to the Mississippi Free
Press. Right. No, but we want your advice on how to shape this project. So that's what I want you to do is, like, if we were really going to look at what are conditions in not only here in Jackson and JPS, but in different counties, like we're already looking at Noxubee County and some of the things with all the closed schools and the takeover. We're doing some of that reporting now. Trashida Jackson is working on that. But what are the kinds of things that we need to be thinking about? Because so often when we have an education debate in this state, it's kind of a red versus blue funding issue or debate. I'm not saying funding's not important. We all know funding's important, but how can we approach this that goes further than that, or kind of tries to get outside of that frame of who's right about funding? I mean, what else do we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, I think some of it is the question. Like, what is the question we trying to answer? I saw with when they were running the ballot initiative a few years ago, and overwhelmingly, most people in Mississippi agree that kids deserve a free public school education. Now, when we start asking what kids deserve that, right? or do all kids deserve that, we kind of get into the muck of who belongs and who deserves. But you get that across any other social issue that you would probably talk about in the state. So it is about figuring out why. Why do people place certain value on certain things for certain people? And can we ever get Mississippi to think about working itself up from the floor? I think a lot of attempts when we talk about education, especially when people talk about building youth programs or youth projects, is always this thing that ends up being the talented 10th, right?
Yeah.
Where we get those kids who rise to the top. We barely touch the kids at the bottom, and we might have minimal touch with kids at the middle. And so in a lot of cases, we end up starting off great and finishing up well, but we don't show growth with a lot of things that we do inside the school, in our communities, because we hadn't really figured out how to raise the floor versus lowering the ceiling, right?
Oh yeah. Oof.
Nobody asking for things to be easier.
Yeah.
No, most people not asking for things to be easier, but they are asking for things to be fair. They're asking to have a fair chance. They're asking to be resourced equitably, fairly, justly. And then we our young people sometimes is don't do nothing but ask them, how do you see the world that you live in? How do you see the city that you live in? What makes you love it? Right? Because we can go through every list of complaints for every skating rink and movie theater we don't have, right? But what is it that makes these kids love this city that they in? And we got to build from the place of the things that they love. Like all of us here, right? And some of us here, certainly by circumstance, but I choose to believe that there's more people in Jackson and there's more people in Mississippi that's here by choice and love of this place, of its heritage, of the people. And so how do we build things that work from the places that people love, and especially that young people love? I remember it was a project that they did, I want to say maybe it was 8 to 10 years ago, with kids in Jackson with disposable cameras, right? And they tell them to go around and find things that's beautiful about the city while they downtown. Most of the pictures was abandoned buildings that the kids brought back. And what they were explaining was they saw the beauty in the things that they could build something from, not the things that already existed and that existed in a way that didn't seem like it could welcome them, right? And so, like, that took me back to see that the adults were down there taking pictures of the cathedrals and the governor's mansion.
Right.
And these kids, like, no, I see the beauty in something that I can actually have influence in what it is, what shape it takes, how it turns out. It's hard for me to imagine myself fully integrated into something that already exists, that didn't think about me, that don't welcome me, that wasn't built in consideration of me at all. So, I mean, with them kids, at Lanier, they had a project called My Mississippi Eyes.
I remember.
And I think that's what we got to do, is give these kids an opportunity to let us see through their Mississippi eyes, live through that, build things around it, support them based on what's in front of their Mississippi eyes, not just what's in front of their Mississippi eyes, but what they Mississippi eyes can see so far down the line beyond where our imagination is, because we borrowing the world from them.
That's
and
right.
we visioning a better world that we can give back. But then their responsibility is to vision a better world than the one we give back to them for the people that they borrowing it from. So we got to set it up in that way. It's this quote that says, I understand that I am not here because of the work that lies, because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind. And so that's why I understand it's not about the work that I got to go out and do that's in front of me. It's the appreciation of the Bob and the Fannie Lou Hamer, of the You Need a Blackwell, right? It's the appreciation today of Aisha Nyandoro, of Olivia Cote, Macy Brown, Nashawn Lambright, Erica Bennett, Arikia Bennett, all these folks who out here really pushing it on the ground and keeping us moving. I probably hadn't answered no questions you asked.
No, you're good. Don't worry. All you have to do is open your mouth.
You answer some universal questions.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Well, you're dropping truth, that everybody needs to hear. These things. I get so angry about the hopelessness that people place on so many of our young people. Because they're brilliant. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of young people, and one thing you said there that I repeat every chance I get is that so many of our young people who need the programs the most or the opportunities don't get them. That you kind of talked about, how it's structured, and that's really important to say, is that people don't certain kids that people see as having the most potential or whatever, whether they're right or wrong, get the most opportunities. And then it gets so that's a really big deal. And one of the memories I'll always have of Mr. Moses when I first met him, I was starstruck, he's this hero from the past. And I won't go into all the reasons why we were getting together, but a group of us were getting together and to talk about a radio program or something. This was like the year we started the Mississippi Free Press, or the Jackson Free Press, I'm sorry. And we were getting together at a loft, and we had like the food out and the whole thing. And he showed up with a group of kids all around him, as he always did. I didn't know him well yet. After that, I understood that that's what he does. He does, is that he surrounded himself with young people and believed, no matter where they're from or what neighborhood, he believed in their potential. And that's something that you guys, all of you generations who have come from his vision.
Your first issue of the Jackson Free Press has one of my closest friends, Marquise Lowe. He was the person of the day. Kiki. So Kiki, I brought Kiki into the algebra project. Yeah. Me and Kiki, I used to not like Kiki that much because he could skate better than me, which means the girls he could skate forward and backwards. I didn't even know how to use brakes on the skate, so I had to run into the wall. But no, Kiki was like the person of the day. But that's how Bob, he always, look at him. But Bob always made us feel like we belong in any room. So like we would be spending summers on the campus of MIT, and we look different than everything around there, right? But then it became common every summer between MIT and Harvard. In Cambridge, Massachusetts, they knew every summer the Mississippi kids coming. So they take care of us. They feed us. They look out for us. They make sure, that we know where we are. And Bob always opened those doors, different colleges and places that we had opportunities to go to. Like it's this movie called Freedom Song. The Algebra Project had students out on a spring break tour. And kids sitting on the set watching Danny Glover film this movie. Danny Glover is like our uncle. This a guy, him, Harry Belafonte, like these people we grew up under. Like these men kiss my babies, right? It means a lot to me that Bob opened these doors for us, right? And then what you're talking about in the sense of opportunity, some of us can directly tell you that right next door to us, the kid who didn't have that algebra project opportunity had a much harder way of making it, right? But what the algebra project did do for us was allow us a space to open up that thing about opportunity to say, you might then start off with us in the 6th grade, but it ain't too late to get in this program in the 8th grade or the 9th grade or whatever it was. And then it allowed us to change the parameters of the definition of success, because you got kids like Jonathan Husband, who is designing highways in Texas and California right now, from right here on Ridgeway Street in Shady Oaks. You got folks like Ariel Fleming, who came straight out of college, was working for DuPont, right? But then you got Sammy Myers, who was in the program, never graduated high school, one of the most stand-up fathers, one of the best community leaders that you will see, coaching his son's baseball team. Right, you got so many of us. Rosalind Pendleton and her twin sister Roxanne. One is a public school teacher. One is a social worker for the state. Jessica Gordon took the math thing the further. She went and got a master's in math. But this was all because we were afforded an opportunity. But for every one of us that I can tell you took advantage of that opportunity, I can tell you 10 people that they opened the door for. It was always, it wasn't each one teach one. We was always responsible. Each one teach 10. And so now we got kids that still carrying that out across the country. Some of them never met us or never will meet us, and their life is influenced by us. The same way Ella Baker was dead when I was born, but my life is rooted in what she taught and gave to Bob. You know, I love Marina and her mom because what her father left behind for me. That's my neighborhood. That's
Rena Evers. Rena Evers, just so people know.
Oh yeah, Miss Murder. They the best. They the best. And Jackson the best. We got a lot here. And I'm appreciative that we got outlets like this that tap into the real stories of who we are, and not just the sensationalized stories of what goes wrong here, because it's a lot going right in Jackson, from the top to the bottom. And definitely with these young people, you're going to really see our young people surprise some of us and totally fulfill a lot of us who knew all along that they had everything it took if we could build a city around them that support their wildest dreams. And so the last thing for me is this StoryCorps interview with my son. The last thing I told my son on there, when he said, "What's your dreams for me?" I told him about this African proverb that says a child is born with their fist balled up, because that's where they hold their gifts. And as they live, they learn how to open their hands, because that's how they learn to release their gifts to the world. So we got to build Jackson to be a city where every kid can live with their hands unfolded and release their gifts to the world. And Wendy, I love you. I see you. I see you, Miss Pam, too. How y'all doing?
Kimberly, you want to sneak in there real quick?
Well, I know we got to wrap it up, but I think one of the things that we can never put too fine a point on is that all these young people, no matter where they grew up, no matter where they were born, they're all going to run into the same trouble. They're all going to have the same issues. But some young people have enough money, enough time, enough of somebody with influence to help them through some of those issues. And then some of those same issues, because of what you look like or where you live, those issues may end up on the news. It's the same thing that has happened. Y'all did the same stuff. Both of y'all got caught, you know. And I think we sometimes miss saying that, like, when you're young, you don't do bright stuff, right? Sometimes because because it's a situation of desperation. Sometimes you don't have the right tools to cope. But what happens is some of our young people, that's a spotlight put on them, like they did this thing. And then some young people get a call made and say, "Oh, can you just not tell anybody?" You know, so he didn't know, he didn't know. And I think it's so important, because I feel like folks like you have made some calls and helped some people and walked through some doors. And it was interesting when you talked about one person and that duplication of what happens in the community. So there's one, and that algebra project is extending in the community in ways we don't often think about. And I think that's so, so very important, because you are holding up some young people and helping some young people in ways that are more important than anyone can even put a finer point on.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, they gave us the opportunity to take the mantle. And I think for myself, had I not learned about Mega Evers, Bob wouldn't even matter to me. I learned about Mega Evers in elementary school when they give you the same little coloring paper every year. You either gonna color Rosa Parks or you're gonna color Dr. King, right? It's all cartoonish. The stories don't even sound like nothing you can be close to. It's the hero sides of she sat down and he gave a big speech, right? Then my grandmother takes me and I stand in Mega Evers' driveway right the next street over from my mother's house.
Wow.
So when the only thing Bob ever said that made him relevant to me as a child, he said, yeah, and Mega. I was like, Mega Evers? He said, yeah. I said, did you know him? He was like, yeah, I worked with Mega. I knew him and that's when Bob became something for me to follow. Other than that,
wow.
Old man in our class telling us we could do math different than everybody else, but you know, the adults had hype around him. We kids, you got to do a lot more to impress us than just show up and have the adults love you. And so, I mean, he said Mega Evers' name, and Mega Evers is what made the civil rights movement tangible, real. Like, I'm like, somebody came from where I come from. Then I started finding out about Lazaza White's grandmother and Monastery Baptist Church and Mount Ham. And I'm like, wow. Okay. Wow. Like we was born into and from this. So oh yeah, Bob just helped me understand better who I am, where I'm from, and Mega Evers is what made Bob more than just the old man to me.
I think we could have a whole episode on telling Bob Moses inspirational stories. I mean, I didn't work with him like you do, but I have my own.
We should do that. Bob, he needs that love right now.
Maybe we should. Yeah. I'm serious about that, because just some of the things. Yeah. I mean, he's just a remarkable man, and being able to meet him right when I moved back to Mississippi was just a pivotal thing in my own life. But Albert, this has just been amazing.
Thank you.
We're going to be in touch, because we need your help as an advisory board member. We need your help on this education solution plan.
Let's get it going.
Yeah, we will. And some of the other people you mentioned, like Macy and some other people. Macy, you mentioned a lot of advisory board members, because we have an incredible advisory board, and Macy Brown's one of them on the advisory board, as you know. But we're going to be calling on some people to help us put this strategy together in kind of a very different kind of way. And I want to mention again, like I did up front, the solution circles, folks, are all about approaching community members like Albert means. I mean, right now we have to do them virtually, but it's about listening on our end as media, and what we've always tried to do, but these circles. So please, mfp.ms/circles. Hopefully. Yes, there it is. So go there and just sign up so you get the emails. And we're not going to share your info or anything like that, but sign up and you can get the emails, and then I'm going to try to get Albert into a circle soon too. I'd love you to come to the next media circle. So I'm going to bug you about that. Let's make it happen, because this narrative conversation is so important, and that's narrative change is at the core of our mission, as you know, and it always has been. Other than that, I wanted to tell y'all, oh, by the way, it's flashing up here. We are a nonprofit, and we are still collecting money against the $10,000 match that Angie Thomas provided. Angie, another Jackson native here, and y'all know her. She's fabulous. So we're getting closer to that. So we're please give what you can. Throw a few bucks in the tip jar to help us keep doing this kind of narrative change reporting. We really appreciate that. And then our next week's show actually has two people that Albert mentioned tonight. He didn't know that. He didn't know that when he said it, but Kimberly and I next Thursday night are going to be talking to Erika Bennett.
Yes.
And to Nashambi Lambright Haynes, I believe is her name now. Yeah.
Don't feel Erika, yeah.
Yeah. And so they're both going to be here. That will be another dynamic conversation. These women are experts in criminal justice issues, some of the work they're doing, also in voting issues. so many other things. Arika is the director of Mississippi Votes, and Nashami's the director of One Voice, right? Ooh, is that me? I don't know if that's me. But anyway, so that's next Thursday night at 6 p.m. And so y'all join us for that show. And then I want, in case Aisha is listening to this, I was a Kellogg Fellow with Aisha when she was kind of putting this nonprofit together. I know you're a Kellogg Fellow too, aren't you? Yeah. But tell Aisha we're going to be calling on her to come on this program. She is actually, we've talked to her a lot for our Black Women COVID Project, which is about systemic issues that COVID actually highlighted. And that project's going to be starting to drop very soon. So we'll get Aisha on to hopefully very soon to talk about her remarkable nonprofit that you kept talking about. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much, Albert, for being here. We just adore everything that you do. You're so inspirational. Everybody's going crazy in the comments. We're also on YouTube, so you guys share this, get it out there, make sure that everybody hears from Albert Sykes. See y'all soon.
Thank you. Good to see you.